name is Samara. I have attention deficit disorder, or ADD. At 8 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD. I was told I would grow out of it. That was a flat out lie. I don't know if it's something that doctors actually believed, that these little kids were gonna grow out of their ADD, but it has since been proven a myth. I had your typical ADD kid symptoms. I couldn't focus, I couldn't keep up in class, I struggled with reading, I struggled with math, I struggled with spelling and history, you name it, I couldn't freaking do it. Unless you threw some color in it, told me to make a project out of it, maybe then I could nail it. In fact, I remember in the 5th grade being given a history project where I was told to make a board game out of the Revolutionary War. I rocked that. You know what else I did? I was able to film an entire make-believe newscast. That was learning for me. I got to get into it. I got to be a part of the history. I could not sit down in front of a textbook and have you talk at me. That's just not how you teach a kid with ADD. It's just not. Fast forward to my diagnosis in 2005, 2006. I finally get a diagnosis. They hook me up to some EKGs, EEGs, whatever they're called, run tests, tell me to sit down and sit still. I can't do that. I can't sit. I can't sit in one spot and not do something. I remember getting a little itch on my nose and being told to sit still. I couldn't do it. At this point, they tell my mom that I have attention deficit disorder, but now they've also nailed me with OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. Something that was kind of a suspicion, because on top of me not being able to focus on schoolwork, I had little quirks. They were just messed up. If I walked by the kitchen table and I stubbed my left pinky toe and my right pinky toe didn't feel the same way, I would turn around and I would smash it, because my body had to be even. If one hair stood up oddly on my head, I would drench my head in water to get my hair to all sit down silky smooth and be the same. If I laid down on the floor and my shoulder blades didn't touch at the same time, I would lose it. I remember screaming and being so uncomfortable because both sides of my body did not feel the same way, and wishing I could just float in the air and not touch anything ever again. Tears because my body felt different, because I couldn't feel even. To this day, one of my biggest OCD quirks is my socks. If you ever see me pull my shoes off, my socks will be inside out, because I don't like the seam on my socks. I can make an entire video about the fight my mom and I went through with socks as a kid. So, 6th grade, diagnosed with ADD. They throw me on a medication, tell me it's gonna make everything better, but I was not given the skills in which to learn. Now I had this medication that told my brain to sit still and listen and absorb information, but I still only maintained a C average. Enough to play sports, enough to be your average kid. And I made it through and I did my thing. I did that. I was on this medication up until the end of my freshman year of high school, when my mom went through a divorce from my stepdad. In the process of this divorce, We went from obviously like a 2-income household to a single income household where it was just me and my mom and my little sister. Because my mom was now back to being a single parent, she worked long hours. She worked her butt off to support me and my sister. But in this time frame, she never had time to pick up my prescription that I needed. So it kind of just fell off the rails and I stopped taking the medication. Come my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I struggle all the way through high school. With my education, I struggle with making friends. I struggle with anxiety and depression. I have this feeling of being alone all the time. My junior year of high school, my two best friends graduated a year before I graduated. They were a year older than me. And I was kind of like, okay, I'll be all right. I'll be happy for you guys, but I'm going to come back here and I'm going to be by myself, and that's going to suck. But I'll get through it. It's 1 year, whatevs. I can do it. I make it to the end of the first quarter of my senior year, and I've broken down into a depression that I don't even know if you can call it a depression. I'm just alone. I feel alone. I don't ever talk to anybody. I've kind of segregated myself from the people in the school because we didn't connect. We just kind of, it was them and me, it felt like, and I didn't trust people. It was a lot of it was probably what I brought on myself. But at the end of the day, we just didn't click and I felt alone. The end of that quarter, my mom transfers me back to my old school where I had attended from 5th grade into the end of my freshman year. At this school, I am back with my friends that I love dearly. A lot of them I still talk to today, but their dynamics had changed when I got there, and so we kind of had to work to force me to fit into the dynamic, which was still uncomfortable at times, but I knew I was wanted there. It had just been a long time since I had fit there properly. I worked my butt off to get through my senior year. I barely graduated. I had like a 2 point something GPA. It was close. It was, it was like when the little car goes under the semi, it was that close. It was like, it was close. When time came, we're getting close to graduation, I said, I'm not going to go to college. I'm not ready for that. I don't want to go to college. Anyway, when you tell a building full of educators that you as their student doesn't want to go to college, they don't take it very well. So they put the pressure on. I said, fine, I'll apply, I'll go to college. I get to college, cue giant anxiety attack. I ended up dropping out. Wasn't my deal. Not a big issue for me. I ended up having to pay like $500 back to the college, but I wasn't ready for it. And I knew that, but nobody had trusted my gut instinct. But at that point, that's when I kind of, the next few months I kind of floated through life, kind of just let life happen to me. But then as time goes on, I realized that ADD is going to be a part of my life forever. A big part of growing up, a big part of what I believed growing up was that the ADD was going to wear off, or that I was going to grow out of it. And like I said earlier, that just wasn't going to be the case. That's when the struggle with ADD as an adult began. I wasn't able to stay on top of housework. I would procrastinate on household chores. I'll do the dishes tomorrow. I'll pick up the kids' toys in the afternoon. I'll get it in the morning. It's not a big deal. But slowly and slowly, those things would pile and pile and pile until I was completely bombarded by everything. And the messier our living space got, the more cramped my mind became. My brain was on overload. The anxiety set in. I would hide in the, I would curl up on the couch and I would just pretend that the house wasn't about to swallow me whole. Eventually, it got to a point where I didn't have people over. If people stopped in, I was utterly embarrassed for them to see my home because it didn't even look like it was livable. It didn't look like something I should have kids living in. It was just awful. And I didn't want anybody to see it. I had friends who were like, well, I'll come over and I'll help. My mom always told me that she would come help me, and I was just like, no, I'll get it. I'll get to it. I swear. I promise I'll get to it. I'll fix it. Things are going to be better. I'm going to be better. But I never could get better. And I just ignored it. I would take the kids out. We'd go camping. We'd go hiking. We would go anywhere that wasn't inside that house because I couldn't look at it. Couldn't even think about the battle of getting it done. Because every time I would start something, I knew that as soon as I looked away from one project, I was going to be 100 miles away doing the next. And by the time I would get 25 minutes into cleaning the house, it would be worse than when I started because I just couldn't stay on one task at a time. It just, as hard as I tried, it was never possible. I fell into this awful cycle of not even wanting to be in my home. I got angry. I was yelling at my husband. I was yelling at my kids. I was yelling at myself. I would just sit and I would cry and I would angry scream, and I just couldn't figure out what all this was stemming from. Obviously, looking back, it was the ADD because it was just kind of the root of everything. So I get to the point where I can't even stand to be in that house anymore. There was lots of discussion, there was lots of ideas thrown around about what we were going to do as a family. We had gotten to a point where my husband and I weren't fighting anymore. I was trying to work on my anger issues, but it was a struggle. It was such a struggle. Finally, my mom and I sat down and we concocted this plan. And me and my girls were gonna go stay with her while my husband was working away on the road. This gave me a few months to reset and kind of think about how I was gonna approach my life. There wasn't gonna be any more floating, letting other people make decisions, letting life happen to me. I was going to make decisions and make things happen. The one condition for my mom to let us stay with her was that I had to go see a doctor about my depression because it had gotten bad and it was hard for her to watch. So I make an appointment with the doctor. I take this big questionnaire about depression and how I feel and how often I feel sad or down or how often I think about death, dying, suicide, which was when somebody actually sits down and asks you that question, it's kind of appalling to know your answer is not zero. But so we talked to the doctor. I mentioned to him that I had been diagnosed with ADD as a kid. He asked me a few questions about how I was diagnosed, if there was tests run, which there were, and he asked me more questions about my ADD and my kind of day-to-day activities and he listened to that and he said to me, he said, Samara, I know you think you're leaving here with an antidepressant today, but you're not. And he gave me, it was basically Adderall. It was an Adderall substitute.
he gives me this prescription and he says, I want you to go home tonight and I want you to make a to-do list, a checklist of all the things you want to get done this week. And tomorrow morning, I want you to tackle 2 to 3 of them, and then the next day, do 2 or 3 more, and so on and so forth. And then in the next week, I want you to do it again, but I want you to make your list a little bit longer each day. And then come back and see me at the end of 2 weeks. And that's what I did. The new medication was the weirdest feeling I ever had. That first day in particular, I felt like somebody had shut a door in my brain that I couldn't. It was like I couldn't. It was like being locked in one room, and I couldn't go out into the hallway that would lead me into the 6 different trains of thought that I wanted to get into, or that my brain would usually hop on. So I was forced to sit in this room that had my to-do list and check them off one by one. And then when I got those 2 to 3 things done, it was like a door opened and I was able to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing without being overwhelmed by everything all at once. So we did that for 2 weeks and I went back to the doctor and I told him that everything seemed to be going really well. I felt like I was making progress on just the littlest things, which is all the start I really needed at that point. And he said, okay, well, let's keep this up. Call me at the end of the month and we'll get you a new prescription. And we'll just, if you feel like you need to talk or need a new prescription, up it, down it, whatever, we'll just call and we'll fix it. And so here I am. We're in a new apartment. It's gorgeous. I'm in love with it. I've been able to stay on top of little chores fairly easily. I've tackled a little checklist, to-do list every day. Once a week, I tackle one that's a little bit bigger and I do a bit of a deep clean. And I feel better. My mood is better. I'm not angry or sad. I've had one big episode where I just felt down and I wasn't feeling myself. But I kind of journaled my way through that day and I felt fine. But now here I am. I tackle everything like a normal functioning adult. And that wouldn't be possible without medication. And I wish so much that I would have stayed on medication as a kid and through high school. Maybe it would have been a little bit easier to get through school and make friends and just enjoy life. I went through so much anxiety and pressure that wasn't necessary. If I would have just had that little push, that little piece of normalcy, it wouldn't have been so hard. Because even as an adult, everything just seemed hard all the time. I was constantly crying. I was constantly upset. If I wasn't crying, I was yelling. If I wasn't yelling, I was probably asleep. It was just a constant battle all the time, and I don't feel like I'm at war anymore. I finally feel like a fully functioning adult. It's all because of a little pill every day. That's kind of my update. Life story of living with ADD, OCD, and now as an adult, kind of finally figuring it out. I'm so glad that I didn't have to wait till I was 42 to figure it out, because I've seen a lot of women go through life with an ADD, ADHD brain and struggle so much. So I guess I'm just thankful to be alive. I'm thankful to be happy, and I'm thankful for a little pill to get me through every day. That's literally how I do it. I wouldn't function normally without it. And I plan to continue being on this medication probably for the rest of my life. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed to say that I need medication to get through my days, to get through my months and my years in my life. And I don't think anybody should ever be ashamed to take advantage of the tools set in front of them to get through their days. Whatever it may be, whether it's being medicated, whether it's seeing a therapist, whether it's running a mile every morning, 5 miles, I don't care, do your thing. I want to make it a point to let people know that you have to take care of your mental health first. If you let your mental health fall, there's no way to fix, there's no way to substitute your mental health. If you need to take the day off of work, take the day off of work. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to yell, scream into a pillow. But make sure you always find help and have somebody to talk to. Never be ashamed to ask for help. I think that was my biggest insecurity, was asking for help when I needed it. I never wanted to feel like I was failing. And that was a feeling I had a lot. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful and informative to people. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and hopefully I can make another video here soon. More videos in the future, whether they be about ADD, OCD. Because of those things, I will probably make a whole other array of things. I have a lot of different hobbies and interests, so maybe we'll just kind of let this be the lifestyle of ADD channel. Bye, guys.